Chris Dale,
Yes.
can you tell us everything about the Gerry Anderson podcast in 3 seconds? Go.
Well, it's got you and me and thee, and it's got a random episode and an interview and some news.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
That wasn't bad,
That
actually.
wasn't bad, was it?
Yeah.
That's a Gerry Anderson podcast.
Anderson podcast.
I'm going to elucidate a little bit more.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, an hour and a half of all things Gerry Anderson related. If it's not Gerry Anderson related, we don't want to know.
Well, unless it's tugs.
Because we don't go off on tangents.
Yeah.
And we don't
Tugs
talk about
tangents.
tugs.
Do you remember the Tugs debacle?
Oh, yes.
I remember that.
The ongoing
Yes,
tugs debacle.
yeah. We've never really got over it.
We're very lucky, actually, and you're very lucky, Podsterons, to join us this week, because a little later on in the Randomiser, we know this already, we're going to be watching the second part of Crossroads To Crime.
Oh,
Which we're thrilled about, aren't we?
Yeah.
Chosen by Wayne Forrester last week.
It's good old Wayne. We do
Yeah.
love him.
It's funny how quick you can go off people. Thanks, Wayne.
We also have the first part of my interview with David Mather.
Of Corgi.
Yes, of Corgi fame.
Fame, yes.
He's bringing a little something to show our wonderful viewers.
Oof.
Can't really show our listeners, but we'll have to be very descriptive, I
Yes,
guess.
an
won't we?
audio description of the thing
That's
that he's
right,
bringing.
yeah.
Perfect, can't wait.
Yeah, and of course we'll be hearing from our wonderful Podsterons who've been emailing us at podcast@gerryanderson.com.
They have.
Now, I've got some YouTube comments because people do love to comment beneath our videos.
They do.
This is from Pod332. Do you remember we watched the Attack of the Alligators? Classic
I do remember
Thunderbirds.
that, yeah.
Not so
Very
long ago.
enjoyable.
Yes, we enjoyed it.
Unlike Crossroads To Crime.
Jay Fenny says, with regards to Anderson episode titles with exclamation marks in
Oh, yes.
Chris,
Yes.
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 a couple do come to mind. There's the UFO episode Killstraker,
Killstraker. Yes.
and then the Secret Service episode Mayday Mayday. Shows off by having 2.
Yes.
Yes. Very fancy.
Not sure if there are any others, says Jay Fenny.
Well, why don't we add to one?
Yeah.
This can be Gerry Anderson Podcast Pod 338,
Yes,
is it?
yes.
Exclamation mark.
Ooh.
Can you put that in the title?
Yes, I will,
Good.
if I remember, so
There we
probably
go.
not.
No,
But I'll try and remember. Ian Deeney says, fun fact, the blinking chandelier in this episode of Thunderbirds was actually the same one seen in X20's house in Stingray.
Makes perfect sense.
Great
Why not
little
reuse
fab
that
fact
prop?
there.
Isn't
Yeah.
it? Yes, if only fab facts are still a thing.
What a shame that they were
Alas.
destroyed by Richard
Yeah.
James.
Great Fab Facts fire.
And this one from Willow saying, a note to Jamie, behind
Yes.
this Anderfan is a husband getting slowly shoved out of his house by the amount of Anderson merch. Sometimes the wives are the problem. This is in reference
yes.
to, was it Jeff who sent us an email about his...
From Australia.
That's right, about his
Yes.
wife humouring his Anderson...
So what, supporting it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
That's right.
There are many long-suffering partners
There are.
out there, and many very supportive partners out
Yeah,
there too. So.
yeah, it's nice, isn't it? Yeah, good. But yes, do comment beneath our YouTube videos because we love to see your comments. I like it when people rate the episode we happen to be watching on the
Yes.
Randomiser. Few
That's
people
quite
took
nice.
umbrage at my giving 3 to
Yes.
Attack of the Alligators.
Caused a bit
Rightly
of controversy
so.
there.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Let's see what I give Crossroads To Crime a little later on, shall we?
Whoa.
But in the meantime, for something a little more current, shall we have some Gerry Anderson news?
Yes. Gerry Anderson News it is. Hello.
News.
Hello.
It's the Gerry Anderson
got in there quick.
news.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You and you getting in quick.
Yeah.
Stingray Project Orca.
Right, what's that?
You may have ordered the book. You may already have the book itself. It's the second novel
Mm-hmm.
and the third/4th instalment in the Deadly Uprising saga.
So it follows on from this and this.
Yes,
Okay,
Chris is now
yes.
holding up the Titanic Construction, his novel written by him.
Yes.
And the Comic Anthology Volume 1.
So there's
Right.
a cliffhanger at the end of this.
Yes, which Project Orca picks up on.
I see.
And if
Gotcha.
you're not a reader, but you are a listener, then the audiobook may be something you're looking forward to.
Yes.
And the audiobook read by Wayne Forrester, is available to download from the 6th of December.
Great.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So, and you may wish to buy the book and listen along or something.
Yeah, of course you would, yeah.
Up to you.
Yeah.
And more Deadly Uprising news.
Mm-hmm.
The Stingray Comic Anthology Volume 2, which brings us to the conclusion of the Deadly Uprising
Oh,
saga.
really?
Yes.
All wrapped up?
In an epic finale, and it
Wow.
really is epic. I think it's the most epic Stingray comic story of all time.
Yeah.
Possibly the most epic Stingray story of all time. I think it could be. And that's
quite a claim.
Yeah,
That's
that's
a
saying
bold
something. But
Yeah.
I think I'm right, though.
Yeah.
That is available to pre-order on the 6th of December.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. Time to complete your Deadly Uprising collection, or start it.
What a year it's been,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yes. very big year. Happy birthday, Stingray. 60 years.
Has anything not happened that you hoped would be a part of this year, or has everything come off fairly smoothly?
That's all happened.
Great.
Because we planned it,
Yeah.
we said those things would happen, and they've all happened.
Yeah.
Which has been rather lovely.
Amazing.
So, no.
Good.
That's it.
Yeah.
All
Good.
Stingray. That's the end
And
of
if
this
you order
week's-
from the Gerry Anderson store, you get Project Orca is signed by the author, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
At the time of recording, Bob was in our warehouse yesterday.
Yesterday, yes.
Yeah,
Right.
signing those
Great.
by hand.
Good. By
Not,
hand.
not pre-printed.
Yeah.
His own
They're
hand.
signed by hand.
Yes,
Wow.
yes, we did get a complaint that Chris's signature was pre-printed, but it wasn't because
Because, you know, there's such demand for my autograph.
He did
I,
it.
I don't have
Small.
time to sign everything.
have a stamp.
Yeah.
Yes, he did them all by hand. So if you have
course
got
it is.
one, it was actually done by Chris. There were no pre-printed signatures. Anyway, yes, they're signed, the hardback editions, but
Yeah.
they may well have all gone by now. So
I once got a John Pertwee signature that I know was pre-printed, and that was disappointing.
that is very sad, but ours are not.
No.
So no disappointment
This one
here.
isn't signed.
No.
This was shipped from the warehouse.
A rare unsigned copy. Anyway, there you go. That's the end of this very Stingray heavy Gerry Anderson news.
That was the news, news.
Chris,
That was the newsy news.
Is that what I think it is?
That was the newsy
That's
news.
the Crossroads to Crime.
I thought so. I like it. I like
Please.
this a lot.
That
Wait,
was
no.
Big fan.
We've
Big
got to
fan.
get David Mather in to stop him.
All right, let's talk to David Mather.
Please, David.
News. That was the news.
David Mather, head of marketing at Corgi. How on earth do you end up with the best job in the world?
It's one of those funny ones. I mean, I had a good chat with Jamie about this in edition in January.
That's right,
And
yeah.
it's really sort of one of those things where you start doing one thing, you go somewhere else. So I started off being the company photographer. So I used to photograph every single model that came through the building, in effect,
Right.
whether it's Hornby, Scarlet, Street, Airfix, and Corgi. And I always used to gravitate more towards Corgi because there's actually quite a bit more involved with doing that. 'Cause you have
Okay.
to shoot photography for the packaging.
Yes.
And, just handling all this stuff. You end up learning all about it.
Yeah.
And in the end, through circumstance, in effect, I was asked, would you want to be in charge of this brand and actually start working on what products are you going to start making for this brand?
Wow.
And so we've had a little bit of a restructure. I've got a little bit of a change in title. There's no difference in what I'm doing, which is good. But in the end, it's like still all about being creative in a different way. You used to do photography, now you're actually coming up with things. And
Yes.
it's this really strange thing where you sort of realise that you're bringing people pleasure in that way.
Absolutely.
And I went in Forbidden Planet and down in London over the weekend.
Yeah.
And there's all stuff that's come out of my head on the shelves.
There it is.
And it's amazing, and it's not been in there before in some ways, and it's like
Wow.
amazing.
Now-
It's actually just happened at long last.
That's fascinating. So, are you driving this, or is it driving you? In that, are you free to develop concepts?
I mean, there's a lot of sort of business sense as to go
Yeah.
into it. You have to sort of really be planning ahead. I mean, we're already talking 2027 stuff
Right.
in some cases.
Yeah.
And we're recording this in 2024.
Right,
So,
yeah,
sort
that's
of
right.
we'll come back then and sort of talk about that again, maybe.
Yeah, crazy.
But, so it's ultimately like, it's not so much about finding what is going to be on trend. We're not like a Mattel or a Hasbro or anyone like that, because we do sort of trade in nostalgia.
Yeah.
And so we're looking for things which are sort of nice and warm and comforting and make
Yeah.
you feel happy.
Yeah.
And so very much with the stuff which we're doing, it's sort of looking at what is sort of proven to be popular again.
Yeah.
In the same way that all the Gerry Anderson stuff very much is. After
Yes.
Stingray came out earlier this year.
Uh-huh.
And we'll talk about that in a bit,
Yeah,
I'm sure.
yeah.
But it's there on the table in front of us.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's just one of those where you're ultimately sort of not trying to second guess, but you're saying, what haven't I done? And what
Yeah.
makes sense? And
Yeah.
what sort of feels like a Corgi product? And who feels like a good partner to work with? Because we're all actually doing the same thing.
Absolutely.
In some cases, and especially with all the Gerry Anderson stuff.
Yeah, so you mentioned there you're looking for something nostalgic, feels warm and comfortable. I should imagine Gerry Anderson and Corgi then are a perfect fit.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's just always been sort of, in effect, we're sort of carrying our ways along from Dinky all the way back when.
Yeah.
And then from Matchbox. And then sort of Corgi's had the tooling sort of since about 2008.
Right.
And so we've been doing some stuff to update it, bring stuff forwards.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that later
Yeah,
as well.
please. Fantastic.
But, it's just ultimately trying to find the stuff which feels sort of exciting and fresh, but also has that comfort to it.
Are you also looking for new buyers, for people?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, sort of like that's often the thing because you have corgi collectors.
Uh-huh.
You know, you have like the very sort of dedicated collector base who will come to you whether they're buying our aviation archive models, so scale models of aircraft, scale models of cars. Fords are big, and then the entertainment license stuff. So obviously James Bond.
Yeah.
We've just launched Star Trek earlier this year, and so there's more Star Trek coming. Gerry Anderson stuff continues to go along really happily. We're working with Aardman, so we're doing Wallace and Gromit and
amazing.
Shaun the Sheep in the future. I can say that.
Yeah.
But it's all things like that, and it's sort of like all these things sort of work psychologically.
That's right.
And you're just trying to see what else you can find to keep it going.
Yeah. And how do you find what you're going to do next? I mean, you must have focus groups and marketing sort of...
Yeah, no, there's a bit of that. But I mean, it is ultimately like we've got quite a large, they're called tools in effect, that everything comes out of. So we have a large tool bank. And we sort of look and study that and say, well, what haven't we run for a long time? And Thunderbirds is one of those things where it just sort of ticked along for a bit. It was doing quite well. We'd sell maybe 2,000 a year.
Yeah.
In between since the 50th to now. And we sort of realised all of a sudden that those 2,000 were selling out when they arrived in stock.
Wow.
And it's very much like, well, there's stuff sort of shifting here.
Yeah.
There's obviously an increase in interest.
Yeah.
And then we did Stingray. We relaunched Captain Scarlet stuff. That did the same thing. We've launched Stingray as a new tool in January.
Yeah.
And we announced it for pre-order, and it sort of came in stock about 2 or 3 days later. I was wanting it to be in stock as soon as we announced it, but unfortunately, such are things in warehouses which slow you down.
Right.
But and that just went.
Yeah.
Stingray just went, and so we've got another wave of that coming in, and so it's ultimately like we can see that Gerry Anderson stuff is going really well.
Yes.
We've got some holes in our tool bank because we're effectively utilising what we've got.
Yeah.
And so it's like, right, we'll add some new stuff.
I see.
And we'll talk about that as well.
Yeah, please do. Fantastic. We have got a lot to talk about. I know you brought some things with you as well to show us a little later. We've also got some questions from our viewers and listeners to ask you. In fact, I'm probably going to hand over to them shortly because I know a lot of these questions will lead on to other conversations about what's coming up. But in the meantime, we're going to play a little game. So this is called Super Identification. Okay, you might have noticed these Thunderbirds pictures along the front here with score marks on from previous guests. So it's a little bit of a competition, but only for fun.
Yeah,
I'm going to play you. Don't worry. I'm going to show you some very brief, really quick clips from each of the opening titles of each one of Gerry Anderson's series from 1957 up to 2006. Okay, we just want to see how many you get.
Right.
So if you see one you know, shout it out, and I'll keep score. Okay, ready for this?
Yep, fire away.
Good luck. Right, first off, 1950s. Black and white. Number 2. Here's number 3. It's very early days, David, so don't worry.
Well, that's easy.
Come on.
Supercar.
Well done.
I wish I was a spaceman.
5 minutes off.
Yeah.
For action.
Stingray.
Here we go. You see? Cooking on gas now.
Thunderbirds. Got to say it out loud.
Doesn't even need saying. Yeah.
Oh, Captain Scarlet. Joe 90.
Good, yes. Okay.
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, I do
It's
know, but
it's gone.
It's gone, yeah. UFO.
Yeah. No. You'll know
that's
this.
Space 1999.
That's it.
This is an emergency.
Terrorhawks.
Good. Yeah. Oh.
No.
No.
Space Precinct.
Yeah.
The place of legend, favored right across the universe.
And finally...
Oh, that's Captain Scarlet again.
Yeah, it is. It's new Captain
It's
Scarlet.
a new Captain Scarlet.
The CGI remake.
Oh, I was a bit sluggish to start.
Yeah, you were. Yeah, but that's to be understood because, you know, they are going back a bit, some of those really early ones.
I should have been going, Four Feather Falls, but never mind.
Four Feather Falls?
I forgot which number it was, but it was definitely in there.
Yeah, so we missed Twizzle, Torchy, Four Feather Falls, as you mentioned there. Secret Service. Kind of the hybrid live-action super marination with Stanley Unwin. The Protectors was another live action, but not classic Gerry Anderson, not sci-fi. But David Mather, A rather impressive 11.
11. And
Out of
I
18?
particularly like the picture
Yeah,
as well.
it's pretty cool,
good.
That's not bad going at all, really, is it? Yeah, that's very good. You seem to get on a bit of a run, sort of late 60s into the 70s, really. So what were you watching as a child?
So, I mean, I'm actually of the age, I will admit on camera, I am 42 years old.
Yeah.
So I'm very much of the age when Thunderbirds had its resurgence in the early 90s.
Yes.
You know, I was called up in front of my primary school assembly with my paper-mâché Tracy Island from Blue Peter.
Nicely done.
You know, so
do you have pictorial evidence?
I think it's still in my parents' loft, but I've no idea what state it's actually in.
Great.
But yeah, so I mean, that was very much, like, Thunderbirds is very much the first
Right.
Anderson series I remember. And then it was obviously the BBC saying, oh, this is working. So they start, out comes Stingray, out comes Captain Scarlet. And they're all repeated in like the early 90s along that line. And then they had the Matchbox toys.
Right.
Which sort of leads into where I am now,
Absolutely.
I suppose, as well.
So what do you remember collecting? Do you have a
I had all of it.
Really?
Yeah, no, I did have all of it. I never got the Tracy Island, obviously, since Paper Mache.
Yeah, your own,
but it's very much, I had all like the little Matchbox figures as well of all the characters from Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet and Stingray. So they're still in the house somewhere.
Wow.
And then, of course, all the vehicles, which are quite nicely play-worn these days, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I had all of them that was available, and Joe 90 as well.
And were you aware that these, I guess you were then aware of the name Gerry Anderson and these series were somehow all linked?
No, absolutely. I mean, the first convention I ever went to was a Gerry Anderson convention.
You went to a convention?
And I was about maybe 11 or 12, and that was down at Margate Winter Gardens, which is shut now.
Yeah.
And I still have a drawing which was done for me by Graham Blethman.
Oh, yeah.
Thunderbird 3 launching out the Roundhouse.
Nice.
It's in a lovely red wood frame.
Wow.
The Fab 2 Thunderbirds Fun Day.
Was that the Fab 2 Thunderbirds Fun Day, Chris is
That
asking?
rings a bell. That absolutely rings a bell.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a long old time ago. And, I mean, the Winter Gardens is sort of mothballed at the moment. But I can remember going up and down those aisles, and there were screenings in the rooms upstairs of episodes.
Okay.
And so that was like my first convention. I've been to others since, obviously for other things as well. But I mean, as a dedicated one, that was the first one I ever did.
What was it that drew your eye to these Anderson shows, do you think? Can you put your finger on it?
There's something in it, isn't there? I mean, it's very much the whole thing, and I know when we come to my clips, because it's burned in there in certain cases.
Yeah.
It's sort of certain things burn your way into childhood.
Yes.
And so, I mean, it's just simply the fact that, the characters sort of quite strong, quite fun.
Right.
Some of them were sort of more distinct than others, admittedly.
Yeah.
But it is the vehicles, ultimately. That's the thing, just action and excitement and sort of inventiveness.
Yeah.
And sort of how on earth did you do this with puppets?
Yeah, that's right.
Is ultimately the thing.
Yeah.
It really is sort of something which sort of just captured the imagination when you're of that age, and you don't let go of it.
Yeah.
I've still got like all the books I bought at the time. They're all still in my bookcases at home in my lounge.
Wow.
So it's a proper vintage stuff as well, some of it, and it's sort of like once you're a fan, you are always a fan of it, even though it becomes a little bit rusty, maybe, as I might have just demonstrated.
Yeah. Well, no, not at all. No, you did well. Was there a moment then, even at that young age, where you were watching these things on TV, going to the conventions and so on, where you thought you wanted to be part of this world somehow?
Never imagined it.
Right.
It's definitely one of those things where I sit here now with you and say to that 11-year-old, you're not going to believe it in like 30 odd years' time.
Wow.
Now, if you could think what you're going to be doing and actually sort of, as I say, going into a shop and seeing stuff that's come out of your head for that licensed property on the shelf is like, it's amazing. Actually, it is amazing because I do get to make toys.
Yes.
I get to come up with toys and sort of do
and
things
take them
like
home.
Well, not all the time. I do
okay.
pay my way, and then there is obviously the thing about getting hooked on your own supply. So I have to be quite careful with that because my wife will have a go at me, especially with a 4-month-old in the house. So it's very much like, I don't want her playing with these. They've got to stay in Daddy's special cupboard.
Absolutely right. Yes. So. Almost by accident then, really, you took that leap from photography to what you do now. It was never a designed course then.
It was something I wanted to do, but sort of events sort of hastened it along in some ways.
Yeah.
And so it's ultimately, found your feet and you're doing these things, and sort of, ultimately, you're doing a bit of marketing, bit of product development, bit of design, bit of creativity still with photography, because I still dip my toe in on occasion, and things like that. But it is just the fact that we're sat here now. And we're talking about what we're doing in 26, 27, and we're coming up with that. And then in 18 months it'll exist.
Yes, that's right.
It is sort of like something like that is continually amazing to
exciting
me in some ways.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that we've been conversing over the past few days and weeks about your favourite Anderson moments and so on. So let's have a look at your first Anderson memory and we'll have a chat about this afterwards.
It's a traumatic one.
Undercut down. Flaps down. Banking for final approach.
They really should have dropped down oxygen masks, shouldn't they?
They really should have dropped down oxygen masks. You're right. Yeah.
Easy does it. Easy. He's down. The wheels, they've collapsed.
How are you coping? You all right?
Yeah, I'm all right.
I'm gonna crash. Release foam, section B.
Actually, a much longer and much more impressive sequence than we have time to show here. But that obviously made its mark then.
Oh, yeah, that's it. And I mean, adult me looks at it and says, oh my goodness, that beautiful model.
Yeah. Yes.
But then sort of child me, there are three things which sort of stick in my mind from childhood on TV. And they're all sort of like slightly sort of traumatic. And obviously one of them's a Doctor Who one.
Right.
So I remember really, really clearly The Green Death with John Pertwee being shown on BBC Two on Sunday
bizarre.
mornings.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's just like, it's horrible.
Yes.
And it's like, honestly, I can remember that. I've got no idea what age I was.
That's my first TV memory as well, but from the original showing.
From the original showing, yeah. So, I mean, that's in there. So, obviously, they did something right there.
Yeah.
I mean, the earliest is a Thomas the Tank Engine episode,
Right.
funnily enough, which is on a very similar theme because Thomas sort of burst into flames. Or was it Thomas? Was it James?
Right.
Can't remember.
Okay.
One of those.
Yeah.
He sort of had a similar thing. And then I guess that sort of causes Thunderbird 2's crash to sort of go in there as well. And and I mean, it's ultimately, I think that sort of sums up what we were just already talking about in some ways. You know, the fact that you could have children's telly of a type which is sort of very tangible. The fact that you are actually building something physical and blowing it up, and it's actually on fire. These sort of things sort of obviously go right into the very primal human psyche in some ways, and so to expose that to quite a young mind,
I think it's a way of experiencing danger vicariously as a child, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In a place of safety, that's often the case.
Yeah, so it's really sort of one of those which is just in there all the time in some ways.
Amazing.
But I've dealt with my trauma. I'm sort of quite a well-rounded human being.
You've still got a way to go.
I know. Well, yes, no, I'm sort of shaking under the table. But it's fab, love it.
So you say you have a 4-month-old,
a little girl. Yes.
Now, any chance in the near future you might introduce her to these wonderful worlds?
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, there's so much pop culture stuff of all shapes and sizes around our house, which is my fault, unfortunately. And so, there's literally, I'm a bit like a neutral sort of, I don't support a football team. I'm a bit like Switzerland in effect. I'm completely neutral in anything pop culture. I do not believe in pop culture wars, Marvel or DC, Star Trek or Star Wars.
What's the
Love
point
it all.
in that?
That's it. Just embrace all of it, is my view. And that sort of means that I don't get to play favourites when I make models of things. But I mean, very much. All of this stuff she'll be exposed to, I suspect, as we go along. Although in prep for coming on, I've been watching some Thunderbirds myself, and my wife's been going, I've never seen this because she's a little bit younger than me, and so she missed that 90s revival of it, and so she's like, what is this? And it's like, we've been quite enjoying it.
So you're in the position of sort of introducing it to a newbie whilst being very familiar with it yourself.
Yes, that's it, absolutely.
Now, we have some questions from our viewers and listeners in our Space 1999 lunchbox. So if you want to reach in, take a good old handful for this week. And
grab a selection.
And then we'll do some more next week. And I suspect some of these questions might lead on to one or two other conversations.
I've got a long one to start.
Okay.
So that's probably the strongest one. Oh, look, there you go.
Yes.
So Steve Bushell has asked, hi David, it certainly sounds like you have your dream job.
There you go.
But how do you decide which vehicle craft to develop next? Is it down to the fan base? Well, I'll answer that bit first.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it very much is sort of, we're paying attention to what people are saying, because obviously we've done Stingray,
Yeah.
and that proved extremely popular.
Yeah.
So, people are saying, can I have a Terrorfish?
Aha.
Can I have Fireball XL5?
Of course.
Things like that. And as you say, Steve, you've asked for when can we expect to see the release of Supercar? No harm in asking, which
Sure.
absolutely isn't.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these things are on a list.
Yes, okay.
That's what we'll say. As soon as we're proving that it's doing quite well.
Yes.
So we'll mix it up a bit. We won't do them in like an obvious order. We might tie it to anniversaries, but
Yeah.
they are on a list for
Yeah.
sort of future consideration amongst all the other stuff
Okay.
we have to do. And there's a relatively boring answer that in the fact that physically we have to make that model. We
Yeah.
don't have the tooling for it, so we have to create it from scratch.
So, what kind of timescale is that then? Let's say from, an idea to do something to it ending up on the shelves.
Yeah, I mean, so we're in the midst of one at the minute, which we'll talk about another time or maybe later.
Yeah, good.
And
Yeah.
so that's being designed right now. That's due to come out in just under a year.
Right, okay.
So it's sort of that sort of timeline.
Yeah.
So depending on it's all about complexity as
Yeah.
well. So the thing we found with Stingray was we were going to probably land it earlier than we'd anticipated.
Okay.
In terms of the design, we had the design done. We sort of pitched it at one point, and I think we had the design done in about 7 months.
Wow.
We physically had samples in hand. So I know when you guys went to Telford and did the model
yes.
show last year, which
Yeah.
is nearly a year ago now again. And so we had
Right.
all the samples of that on display on your stand.
Yeah.
And so, it's just that timeline, it can depend on what it is.
And it's
in some
interesting
ways.
you mentioned the complexity there, which obviously is going to put time on the project. But so are you looking for ways to simplify all the time, or don't you mind complexity if it means a better?
It has to be
product?
right. I mean, it depends what the audience is. So I mean, like making a model plane is more complex than making, say, something Anderson related.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the thing with we like these because ultimately, we only need to do the one thing. In effect, we can do some variations in decoration maybe.
Yeah.
But with an aircraft, we have to sort of take into consideration all the different marks. With cars, you have to do different wheels, different trim,
right.
all things like that. So that actually they end up being more expensive to produce than these.
Yeah. And so more expensive on the shelf, I guess.
That's
because
it.
Of that.
Yeah, that's it. Absolutely, because it all
see.
gets passed along.
Yeah.
But no, thank you for that, Steve. And
Yeah.
we'll go for this one here.
Yeah.
Robert Monk, has there ever been an issue with the rights to a license that forced you to cancel a planned project? It's a difficult one to say because I mean we have like a big pot of ideas. In effect, and it is sort of ultimately, it's never sort of progressed to the point where we've had to cancel it, but it's more the fact that it's about feasibility.
Okay.
So we have to sort of go along and say, well, can we do this? In effect, will they let us do this?
Yeah.
Depending on who the licensor is.
Yeah.
So it's ultimately that's an early conversation we have, and sort of, we have these with whoever it may be, different entertainment licenses, big film studios, vehicle manufacturers, all these things. And sort of sometimes you go to some weird places. I've rung up car manufacturers to their UK headquarters, for example, just and ended up chatting to people through their customer care line to try and get a license.
Yeah.
And so it is all sort of like everything's slightly different, in all honesty.
And how involved are they then in the process?
So they have to approve everything.
Of everything.
So I mean, especially if they've got there's stuff called shape approval. So like with a car, for example, it has to be right.
Yeah.
And there's various technical ways we do that. I mean, we do LiDAR scanning. So we'll
right.
go along if it's a classic car, for example, classic vehicle, classic model. We'll go and LiDAR scan the real thing, and then so basically it's really complicated. Probably not enough time for it.
No,
but
interesting.
it's point based. You do put a camera, effectively a camera, radar scanner around, and it takes all this data, it puts it all together. You have a CAD model from that in effect, and then you can sort of take that data and shrink it down from 1:1 to 1/43 or 1/72 or something like that. So it's a relatively complex sort of thing to do, but then other things, they literally, if it's a new vehicle, they have the CAD available, so they just give us the real vehicle CAD, and we just translate that into it as well.
Right, yeah.
So, I mean, with stuff like Thunderbirds or Stingray, for example, we have to sort of find that from somewhere. I mean, there's a degree of digital sculpting involved as well.
Sure.
So there's multiple routes that we take to get it done.
And then even down to the packaging and so on, is that, again,
it's all
a
approved.
conversation that
all
you
has
have
to
with...
be approved with the relevant licensor.
Yeah.
So, and then sort of they have things called style guides.
Yeah.
So there's like a brand look for certain things.
Yeah.
So you can't. Sometimes we've, like with our Star Trek packaging, we've done something quite creative in the fact that it's all in universe, and we'll be talking about something creative with packaging as well.
Right.
For Gerry Anderson property in a moment as well.
Great.
But and other question you asked there, Robert, is there any chance of a space precinct police cruiser? Well, I mean, go on the list.
Yeah.
Because there's a big list. Is what we'll say on that one.
I mean, what should people do? Literally drop you an email at Corgi?
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean,
and if you get enough people...
That's it. I mean, they all sort of... We start collating update it. So the email address, Corgi, what is it? marketing@corgi.co.uk. That's what it is. Ashley Bell, is the Simon Templar car still in stock at Corgi? It is not.
Oh.
But I mean, that's one I'll make a mental note of that, and I will go away and have a look to see what is it lying in our tool bank, because as I say, thousands of tools knocking around.
So that's in a way, a simpler process because you've got it there ready to go, as it
in
were.
Theory.
In theory.
In theory. If you haven't, then you're talking capital expenditure and redesigning, making it, all things like that. So then that's where that assessment process comes into play. I
see.
But in theory. But we will see.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Oh, look, here we go. Rob Slater, can we have a supercar? Well, I said supercars on this. Fireball, that's the first Fireball one, so Fireball XL5. I mean, I love Fireball XL5 as a design. And I mean, obviously, it was never done by Dinky, I believe. Right. Obviously, never done by Matchbox and never done by Corgi. So it would be a straight up redo or new creation from us. But it's got that play value with the separation, of course. So that instantly becomes really attractive to me.
That's something you're also looking at. How is this thing going to be played with?
Can we do stuff? So, I mean, sort of, we're not really anticipating, because we know sort of who we're making it for, but we're making it so it's in the spirit. Yeah. So just like the Stingray, there's things like where we made some allowances, like with the torpedo tubes, because they're squared off. Which is wrong. And we know it's wrong, but we had no choice but to make it wrong to make the torpedoes fire. And so it's very much like, well, no one's ever done it with firing Sting missiles. So it's very much like, right, well, if we want to do that, we've got to make this allowance. And with the expectation that, there's the Matchbox version, there's the... was it Factory Entertainment that did the big one?
Oh, right,
There's a really big one. And so those versions exist. And then so there's like another one, which is the Corgi version, which is sort of in the spirit of the Dinky. So it's very much like, play features and things like that. And Rob Slater also has another request for the police cruiser from Space Precinct.
I mean, there's two already in the space of 3 minutes.
Which is really interesting.
And I didn't instigate any of this.
No, so there you go. Yeah. Right, last one. From Button Moon Hannah. Hi David, I've bought the 50th anniversary edition Corgi Thunderbirds, thank you very much, and recently the Dinky Toy style Stingray. I think you've done a lovely job with them. Have you got any more Anderson themed vehicles planned?
Right.
Yes. I would love to see a Thunderbird 5, or maybe some of International Rescue's pod vehicles too.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. Okay, what can you tell us?
What can we say? Well, bearing in mind...
What have you brought with you?
What have I brought with me? So we'll talk this week about what I brought with me.
Okay, great.
So obviously 2025 is a big anniversary year for Thunderbirds again.
Yeah.
And sort of we last did Thunderbirds properly from scratch for the 50th.
Right.
And that was all very much sort of in the spirit of the Matchbox toys in some ways. And so I have physically brought with me the previous, as it was. So this is literally just gone out of stock, Thunderbird 2. As I say, we've been making runs of these of like 2,000, 3,000, and it's been out of stock. And this model has sort of always been in this colour since the Matchbox days. Yeah. It's very much always been this dark green. But of course, even from the clip we just watched, you look at it and you say, well, Thunderbird 2's not actually
that
colour green, and there's all sorts of other things. So, as an exclusive reveal for you, exclusive reveal, we have the very first sample, which literally arrived 2 days ago before we record.
Wow.
So our plans for Thunderbirds in 2025 are we're going to do them in nice premium boxes. This is a very blank, boring version of the box that you will get. Yeah. It will be skinned. It will have like a logo in foil on the lid. Yeah. The plan is for Thunderbird 2 will be a green box with yellow foil. Fingers crossed. We'll see. They're telling us we can only do silver, but we'll see. Okay. But inside that, we have our new revised Thunderbird 2 with exactly the same tooling. But we've gone and looked at it and said, well, Thunderbird 2 shouldn't be glossy, it should be matte. Yeah. It should be this apple green. Yeah. And so we've gone and put more detail in it. As I say, it's exactly the same tooling. It still has all the features that have been carried along since Dinky. Right. But it's quite a ways away from the blue Dinky version, for example.
Thankfully, yes.
And so ultimately, this is still subject to change. I mean, we've already gone back on what we want to change on it. So this is, as I say, an exclusive. When you see pictures of this, when we announce it properly, it will look different. We're going to make the cockpit black. Okay. Sort out the engines, so they're going to be grey instead of yellow. Okay, And then there's other bits, they haven't coloured the pod, so haven't put number 4 on the pod. Right, but, we'll get that on there. That was a miss on our point. Okay, But, this is how we do it, in effect. This is all about pre-production samples, the process, why it takes a year to bring something to market. Because we get something like this early. You know, sort of like all this was done maybe 3 or 4 months ago. So this is actually quite a quick turnaround. But in the end, you know, we sort of say that we need to keep revising it, get it right. But so ultimately, you know, when you look at it, and I'll give that to you.
Yeah, thank you.
So you can hold that in your hand. You can hold that in your hand as well. And you can sort of, there's no difference in weight whatsoever, but it's ultimately, you know, the finish and sort of how it feels more premium in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely does. Yeah, that's amazing.
And so we're leaning into the collector. And I mean, sort of all the stuff like now, the back of the engines. All of that, we painted all of it and changed it. So I'll lean back in front of my microphone.
Yes, fine.
Because I'm getting excited. But yeah, so it's you know, so that's your exclusive reveal for that. But obviously, we're not just doing Thunderbird 2. So these will be available for pre-order in January. I can't say when exactly, but it'll be early January when our next range launch goes live. And with that, we will have Fab 1.
Right.
As well in this box.
Right.
And we will have Thunderbird 1 and Thunderbird 3 in this box
Amazing.
as well. So these are all our existing tools. We have on Thunderbird 3, we've gone back to it and we revised it.
So it's a chance to revisit.
Yeah, so we're just doing all this stuff. So it's very much like, let's get the colours right. I mean, Fab 1 is fine, perfect as it is. There's never anything wrong with it. But 1 and 3, you know, all the fonts were wrong. Thunderbird 3 sort of had this sort of slightly stubby sort of upper section on the rocket.
Okay.
So that's been retooled. So we've actually made it pointier.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet. I've seen the CAD of it, but you know that'll be coming, and so you know we'll be able to see. And of course, it's not actually blood red.
Sure,
as
that's
it always
right.
has been since the Matchbox days. So it's in this sort of we did quite a bit of research on Thunderbird 2 and Thunderbird 3 and sort of found that Thunderbird 3 is actually it's more orange, obviously, but we had to find out what it was, and it's like it's actually a Peugeot swatch we found. It's a Peugeot Sebring red.
So where do you go to find this information?
Literally the internet.
Okay.
Literally the internet, and it's sort of like
someone will know it.
Someone will know, but then it's also like you know looking at what modelling forums are doing, and so things like that. With Thunderbird 2, it's actually a Humbrol colour, which is easy, and so Humbrol is one of our brands. And so I literally just went downstairs and got the swatch from them, and there we go. It's quite quick and easy in some ways, but you know we're very sort of keen to make it the finish different. You know, there's quite a difference when you make something matte from being gloss.
It's true. It's very true.
And it definitely sort of there's the way it lights in that regard.
Absolutely.
You know, it just feels. And it came out the box 2 days ago, and my development manager and I looked at it and said, "Oh, that feels right." So you know, at last.
So you do get a sense that you're kind of righting wrongs, really.
Well, I mean, it's not so
not
much,
that they did anything wrong.
No,
but
I mean, it's sort of like I've done it quite a few times. I mean, we did it with like the Beatles' Yellow Submarine. Just this year, we've launched like the classic James Bond DB5.
Yeah.
No, it was always gold. The very first
That's
one
right.
was always gold. And they made it gold because, well, it's the year after Goldfinger. It was tied into release of Thunderball, but they made it gold as well, not just because of a play on the title, but because they thought that if we made it in silver, people would think it was bare metal.
Right.
So that's why that vehicle is gold. And then 3 years later, they made a brand new tool of it, which was silver.
Yeah.
But that one was never gold. And so for Goldfinger's anniversary this year, we've done it in silver.
Very good.
So it's all things like that. So it's sort of very sort of slightly, I won't call it cynical thinking.
No, it's not
but
cynical.
You know, it's quite sort of... You know, as a collector, it's like, you know, people will buy everything you can in some ways, but at the same time, it's like, let's make this right, is my thinking on this. Let's actually get it looking correct. And then, especially with that, as I say, when it came out of the box 2 days ago, my development manager and I were sort of completely head over heels about it. You know, we couldn't quite believe it. And he sort of go, oh, at long last, you know, having seen the very toy-like feeling glossy dark green version, to have it in matte apple green.
Such a simple thing.
Yeah, and then that's
Really?
it. And just more detail, and sort of everything about it just feels better in some ways. Like the shape feels better even somehow.
Yeah.
It's
That's
really
right,
deceptive.
even though it's the same.
It's exactly the same. Exactly the same.
Yeah.
So yes, so early January pre-order for that should be due in stock March, April next year.
Okay.
For all 3.
Okay.
So Fab 1, Thunderbird 2, Thunderbird 1 and 3.
Wow.
And then there's more to come as well. But
More
we'll talk
to
about
come.
that later.
Oh, okay, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much for bringing this in. That's a great reveal and exclusive for us here on the podcast. Really appreciate that. So, how much of your work is Anderson related, and how much is other properties? I mean,
Oh my word!
do you just have plates that you keep spinning?
I mean, yeah, it is. It's sort of because I mean, obviously the Anderson stuff is really picking up.
Yeah.
Now, so I mean, like the fact.
And what do you put that down to?
Well, that's it. It's like I spoke to Jamie about in January. It's very much the idea of the growth of nostalgia.
Yeah, okay.
And that's across so many properties.
Yeah.
But you can sort of see that sort of the Anderson stuff is really coming back again. It's had that sort of, not fallow period, it always bubbles along if you're a fan, but it sort of suddenly recaptures the public consciousness.
Yeah.
And especially because it feels so analogue.
Yeah.
In a very, very digital world that we're in now. It's really one of those where it just keeps on coming back.
It sort of represents something that we've lost.
Yeah, as I say, that tangibility.
Yeah.
It's sort of really, we can't quite put our finger on why, we just know that it's happening.
Yeah.
And it's very much something which we're very keen to embrace.
Yeah.
So in terms of how much Anderson there is, I mean, you know, we have like about 100 products new each year in the range. So with Thunderbirds, well, there'll be. Well, will there be 5? There will be 5.
Okay, there will be 5.
Yeah, there will be 5 next year.
Interesting.
So we'll come back to that. But
great.
it's one of those where that with Captain Scarlet, with Stingray, you know, sort of it films a nice little bit of the range.
Yeah.
And then sort of with other bits, you know, we're off talking to all these different people at different times.
Yeah.
And then maybe trying to find some new ones in the future as well.
What's your favourite piece, not necessarily Anderson related, but that you've worked on or that you have at home?
Well, there's a Star Trek one coming. I'm
Yeah.
really proud of, which we've not revealed yet. Which will be announced in January alongside these, actually, which is the movie Refit Enterprise, which is a brand new tool. So we haven't done Star Trek since 2006.
Right.
And so we released our existing models, which the two original series Enterprise, Next Gen Enterprise, we released those back in February.
Yeah.
This year, and so we're just about. I physically have it, you know, and it's beautiful. It's all metal, and it's completely incredibly decorated. Like we've taken the decoration, like we've done on Thunderbird 2, there in effect done like multiple finishes. So it's got matte, it's got gloss, it's got all these things. You know, you hold it in the light, it shines, and it weighs quite a lot as well. And it goes on a lovely display stand. So I mean, in terms of that is really sort of like one of those which it just hasn't left my desk.
Yeah,
it's one of those where it's like, and it should really go off and go in the archive. It's still on my desk, even though no one outside of the building has seen it yet, apart from the people at the licensor. And they love it, and they've approved it. Yeah. So it's one of that's one. But I mean, we've got cars going on as well. Yeah. And sort of like stuff as well with aircraft. So there's always. I try, as I say, not to get hooked on my own supply. Yeah. But it's very much finding things which have some level of meaning. Yeah. And sort of personal stories. Of course. Because sort of most of my job is spreadsheets.
Right.
But some days it's like coming here, and some days you end up flying in a plane alongside a Spitfire, and you didn't know you were going to do that when you got to the airport for that. So it's very much like, right, that's a memory. I better buy a model of that Spitfire that we're making a model of when we get to it. Right. And so I do.
Yeah, amazing. You realise practically everyone watching wants your job.
Oh, no, it's one of those. But I mean, you wouldn't want the spreadsheets, believe me.
Exactly.
But
that's right.
oh dear, honestly disappearing into pivot tables and things like that. But
pivot tables?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks so much for joining us this week, David.
Thank you.
I hope you'll come back and join us next time.
Oh, yes, indeed. More to talk.
Excellent. And more questions from our viewers as well. And maybe a few more treats to spoil us with.
Oh, yes.
Lovely.
Definitely.
See you then.
Super. Thank you.
News.
Well, still going.
Thank you very much to David Mather. Chris, listen, we've had half an hour of it. I think that'll do.
Hang on, let me just get
I'm done.
Virgil's weapon out and I can...
Virgil!
Only.
No, okay, stop him.
Yeah.
Let's go back in.
Talking about going back in, I think many of our podsterons sometimes maybe go outside, have a bit of a live, meet other people, but then they come back in and they send us an email at podcast@gerryanderson.com.
Very nice.
Would you like to hear some of them?
I would love that.
This is the voice of the Podsterons.
Hi, Jamie, Richard, and Chris.
Hello. Who's this?
Yesterday, Saturday, 19th of October, I'm keeping you in suspense. I decided to have a self-care day where we all need them, and spent the day assembling Lee Sullivan's excellent Space 1999 jigsaw puzzle. And I have to say, it helped tremendously.
Great.
It was one of those rare days when I switched off from the world and just focused on that puzzle from early morning until late afternoon.
Very good.
I did finish it yesterday, and my sons, Kyle and Freddie,
Yep.
it's an appropriate Space 1999 name, Freddie. Freddie Freiberg.
Oh,
Yes,
gosh.
I've got
Yes.
it.
That's an inappropriate
I've got
Space
it.
1999 name, isn't it?
Suggested that I should frame it and hang it up, which I'm reluctant to do because I may want to rebuild it.
Do it again, yeah.
I thought about buying another one.
Good idea.
But I noticed it isn't available in the store anymore. Neither is the Thunderbirds puzzle, which I already have and will likely be my next build when I need to switch off again.
Also sold
I
out.
just wondered if there are any plans for other jigsaw puzzles in the future. Appreciate they may not have sold that well, maybe a bit too niche, but I wanted to ask if there might be some more in the future because it really did help relieve the stress and anxiety I have been experiencing lately. Many thanks. And that's from Ian. Well, we can exclusively reveal the Crossroads to Crime jigsaw.
Yes,
That's brilliant. Yes.
That transport cafe was
Yes.
lovely and it's great. I'd frame that one for sure. I mean, the fact that they're sold out would indicate that actually they did sell quite well.
They sold okay.
Yeah.
They sold okay, but they're quite a lot of effort to make.
Right. Because you've got to cut them out each
Yes,
individually.
well,
You also have to paint it first as well.
Yes.
Yeah, he paints each one individually. No immediate plans for more jigsaw puzzles. Maybe in the future, but not right now.
Okay, fair enough.
Sorry, Ian.
Yeah.
There are lots of other Anderson jigsaw puzzles out there.
Yes.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
and other things you can do to de-stress as well.
Oh, it's such a good thing. It's total mindfulness, isn't it, doing a jigsaw, I always think.
See, I don't
No?
get the appeal because
Don't you?
it's like, what are you doing? Well, you're building the image that's on the box. Well, you've already got the box. The
I get
image is there.
frustrated by them.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the same with everything? What are you doing?
Well-
I'm making dinner. Well, you're just making up that I can see the picture in the recipe. You're just doing the picture in the
Yeah, but then
recipe.
you get to eat it. You can't eat a jigsaw, can you?
Same picture. It's just.
If it was an edible jigsaw,
There you
Ah,
go, we're
now we're
talking,
talking,
are we?
yeah.
Yeah, you know where I'm going?
so
Come on.
A cheese jigsaw.
meh. Okay, I've got one from Florian Franken.
Okay, nice.
Great name.
Not a name we've heard before, I don't think.
No, I
but
don't
that's
think
nice.
so. Dear Jamie, Richard, and Chris, hopefully all is well.
Well, yeah. Let's see.
I'm
Do
ready.
you have the sound is
Just checking,
recording?
yes.
So, yes, everything is well.
I've been listening to the Gerry Anderson podcast since you guys interviewed Lindsay and Justin Lee back in 2021. I
Early
guess.
doors, yeah.
Lovely Justin and Lindsay, yeah.
Wow. Gosh.
Since then,
Yeah.
you've all been part of my weekly running routine.
Oh.
While I trained for the Rotterdam Marathon.
A marathon.
Anyone who does a marathon is a bit of a superstar in my book, so well done, Florian. In Pod 332,
Yes.
the pre-order date for the Stingray Technical Operations Manual had been announced.
Oh,
So
yeah.
by the time you read my email, I probably already pre-ordered it.
Well, good.
Very glad to hear.
Might even have it.
Hope that went well. Is it appropriate to send a request if and only if you guys will produce a Thunderbirds Technical Operations Manual? Or should I knock at Chris Thompson's door, since he creates all the lavish 3D artwork for Anderson Entertainment?
Yeah, do that.
No, this door's fine. You can knock on this
Okay.
door. Call me weird.
What now?
No, we might not do that. But my favourite vehicle in Thunderbirds is not an international rescue craft, but it is in
Right.
fact Ned Cook's camera truck from Tower, New York City.
No, that's a nice pick.
Yeah, and the Hood's getaway truck in Edge of Impact.
Oh, yes.
I even had it custom built by a talented model maker in the UK. Well, it really is your favourite if you've had that done.
Crikey.
It had several cameos and can be spotted in at least 7 episodes before sadly being blown up in Alias Mr. Hackenbacker.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
How's that for an old classic fab fact?
There we are.
We love a fab fact. I love the Podsterons are creating
Yeah,
fab facts.
they're filling that niche
Yeah.
for us.
Anyway, time to blow up this long email.
Yeah.
Best wishes from the Netherlands, Florian Franken.
Fantastic.
So marathon runner Florian Franken,
Amazing.
whose favourite vehicle is a camera truck.
I wonder when the Rotterdam Marathon is. I
Or
wonder if
was.
it's been and gone, and I hope it went well if so. And
Yes.
if it's still to come, good luck.
And if you're training for another one, also good luck for that.
Yes.
Or if you're running it and listening to us now while running it, then
Yeah.
keep going, Florian.
going,
You're brilliant.
run.
You're doing great.
Imagine.
Yeah,
Could be.
Thunderbird's Technical Operations Manual. I mean, if you look at the pattern of the releases that are coming up, it kind of might
Next
be
year
next
is
year.
a Thunderbirds
think.
anniversary year.
Feels
Yeah.
quite Thunderbirds in this year, doesn't it? So I'd say that's a very interesting assumption you've made there that might be happening.
Interesting.
Yes, nod, nod, wink, wink, etc.
Great, good. All for now. Do keep them coming in. podcast@jerryanderson.com, or why not drop us an actual physical letter to the Slough at Moxie Hotel.
Just Slough. Just Slough.
That's right.
generally.
SL1.
1GZ.
1GZ, there you go. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, I think it's that time where we settle down and watch a randomizer that we already know is going to be the second part of Crossroads to
So we
Crime.
already know it's going to be quality.
Can't we ask David Mather to press the button anyway?
No, we can't. No, maybe next week. Ready for this?
Yes.
Specs off.
Specs on, reluctantly.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamie, are you all right? I mean, over the years, I've heard a lot of chat about Crossroads to Crime.
Yes.
Yeah.
I quite enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah.
I mean,
can understand that.
There was nothing cut from that. That was the full.
That was the full uncut.
I found it in places. It was quite lean, quite taut.
Really?
There was jeopardy. There was a sense of denouement at the end. Interesting characters. I felt. Connie
locations, beautiful locations.
Beautiful locations.
Yes.
Beautiful Slough, where we are right now. It's lovely to think that might have been done just outside here at some
that's right.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's time we give our marks out of 5. Chris?
Well, I normally say I score it relative to other episodes of the series.
How can you?
Can't do it with
No.
this. But I've seen other films of that era, other B movies of the late 50s and 60s.
okay.
I'm going to score it against that.
Are you?
And I have seen worse.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot better, but I have seen worse. So I'm going to go with a solid 2. I do not agree with people who say it's the worst movie ever made.
No, it's not the worst movie ever made.
I think I said on the primer, it doesn't distinguish or disgrace itself in any way. It just is.
Yeah. Jamie?
Gosh. Yeah. I mean, I've really struggled with that.
Yes, I could tell.
It's not your average Anderson, obviously,
No.
for understandable reasons. But I can't go more than 1.5. But I could have gone 0 or half or 1.
Yeah.
It's got 1.5.
You
The
really
music
could.
was good. Some of it was interesting. The stunt thing up the front was
Yeah.
good.
I mean, David gives it a whole point on his own. Doesn't
David
he?
is great, and that's
Yeah.
it. And it made me hungry.
Well,
not for more Crossroads.
for cigarettes
Yeah.
and bread and butter.
I mean, you have to remember, I gave 3 to Attack of the Alligators.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what
So-
how are you going to give this?
I mean, I'm going to go 4.
No.
I'm going to go 4.
Get out.
Really
What
enjoyed
are you judging that against?
Well, you see, I can't judge it as a Gerry Anderson production because, as you said,
But it is one.
But it's not, is it?
It's directed
It's
by him.
Yeah, but it's not. It's not no more than you would put the blue car travel up
but we
against
had
an
to judge
episode
that.
of Stingray.
Yeah,
So,
you weren't here for that.
No,
No,
that's
you
true.
started.
ran off.
I did. That's right. So I'm going to stick a 4. I really enjoyed
Fair
it.
enough.
I quite enjoyed that as a bit of a timepiece, a bit of a period piece. I found the performances were enjoyable and engaging for the most part. And there is something quite interesting about seeing Slough in the 60s represented on film.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a bit of intrigue, a bit of subterfuge. I'm going 4.
Out of 10.
In my books,
I
that
thought we were
beat
scoring out
Attack of the
5.
Alligators.
I'm just trying to justify it by saying it must be out
Oh,
of 10.
right.
Oh no.
4%?
Yeah, no, that's 4 out of 5.
4.5.
That's 80%
I
score.
cannot believe that. So what's that? It's been at 7.5. That's almost as much as Fireball
Yeah.
last week. What?
Yeah.
You're mad.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have a conversation about this afterwards.
Podsterons, what do you
Podsterons,
say?
yes.
Am I mad, or
Yes,
do you agree
yes,
with me?
you are mad.
How would you score Crossroads to Crime, having watched the first, the first part last week and the second part this week? Good work, Randomiser. I enjoyed that. I wonder what we'll get next week when
knows?
David Mather
It's
will
random.
press the big red
I
button.
hope it's something in colour. We haven't had anything in colour for a while.
Oh, it's something good.
Yeah.
Or talking
time
of
will
a
tell.
note of jeopardy. Join us next week to find out. See you then. Bye.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is Christmas Control. Stand by. Let's go.
Spectrum is green.
The Gerry Anderson Podcast with Jamie Anderson and Richard James.
Maybe I just have a different taste in things.
We all have different tastes in things, but
Yeah.
then there's,
Or maybe I just
I
taste
feel
less.
like you're mocking the randomizer by giving it a score like
Mocking
that.
the secret indictment.
You're not taking this thing seriously.
I am taking it seriously.
You're
I
not.
really enjoyed it. Have I upset you now?
Attack of the Alligators 3, Crossroads to Crime 4. In the words of David Graham, that thing was, what was it, bargain basement going down.
Was it Nat Cohen, EMI, or whoever it was, when Gerry showed it to whoever, they said, well, I'll tell you this, Gerry, I've seen worse.
Yes.
And that was his
Right.
review of it.
Yeah,
Right.
so that's where we are, and then
Yeah.
you're going, Attack the Alligators, that is nothing. You want to watch Crossroads to Crime, mate.
I have a feeling this is going to go on and on.
It really is.
Crossroads to Crime Gate.
See you later.
They're
Right,
all
Jamie,
bad
should we take
books.
this outside? That was an Anderson Entertainment production.